Thank you everyone for joining me today for this latest webinar, Unlocking Potential, GSWA's World-Class Geoscience Data. My name is Tony Perry, the Program Manager for the Geoscience Data Transformation Program, and I hope to be able to take you on a journey today to explain a bit about the processes we have been going through to start to develop, design and build a framework to improve access to the geoscience data held under the custodianship of the Geological Survey. Like all good journeys, I think it's important to go back to the beginning and recognise the foundation of the Geological Survey of Western Australia back in 1888 and its ongoing responsibility it has for collecting and collating geological information from one of the world's oldest land masses, where we have a surface area of 2.5 million square kilometres. It's also good to recognise that the Geological Survey has custodianship of data from a complex geological history spanning over 4 billion years, and that over the 135 years of its existence has actually collated about 4 petabytes of geological, geophysical and geochemical data in various formats, various medias and various types. It's also important to recognise the Geological Survey's Exploration Incentive Scheme, which has been developed to stimulate increased private sector resource exploration, to help us increase our awareness and understanding and potential of new minerals and energy discoveries that could be made, also to increase our knowledge of the state's geology and resources, and obviously to help increase employment opportunities across the sector, and also importantly allowing us to focus on underexplored greenfield regions. Another important aspect for us to consider on our journey is where we are today, and we think about enhancements and what they might look like in the future, certainly around cloud storage. The ongoing cloud storage revolution is going to continue to be rapid in its development. We see no slowing down of that. We also see that there's more of a want and desire to move data to the cloud, which is going to enable us to enhance business intelligence, to do more with our machine learning capability, and also to have that high processing compute available to us, giving us the space and the ability to run those analysis and run those programs and those researchers to give us more access to key information that helps us make decisions. On top of that, we know we want more from artificial intelligence. We want to understand a bit more about what it's going to bring for us. Is it going to help us lead to early identification of resourcing? Is it going to eliminate the time that we need to actually do things, the costs and the risks, whilst also increasing that discovery potential? And importantly, is it going to help us to understand how we can decrease any impact on our environment in a way that safeguards the future of that environment for both ourselves and future generations? As part of our journey, it's important to recognise the common denominator here with everything we've discussed so far, and that's certainly around the importance of the data. The importance of being able to extract more value from that data, to ensure that we have the right mechanisms in place to provide the completeness of data that we need to, that we can flag data as being high quality, and that we can provide that data more easily to all stakeholders that require to use it. We do already know that the Geological Survey here in Western Australia does have a world-class and highly respected geological data set. That's recognised, and that's going to be continued in terms of the way we provide free access to our data for our external stakeholders. We also know there is a desire for easier access to our data, so we have many data sets that are still held either physically or are on tape or just not easily accessible currently. So we know we need to improve on that. We also know we need to be looking at utilising the latest technologies for improved analysis, both internally as we use the data sets for our needs, but also externally. How can we improve the current technology suite that we are using? And we also know there is increased interest in internationally as well as nationally in more companies wanting to do more exploration work within Western Australia, and also understanding more about the geological environment that Western Australia can offer. From a supply perspective, we know there's limited connectivity currently between our data sets internally, and we need to improve on that. In the same way, we certainly do have some standards in place, but there's certainly a need to improve on the standardization of what we have, the naming conventions, the vocabularies, making sure we have a common set that we can continue to use and develop and mature going forward. And we also know, as I've mentioned, we need to unlock more access to our data by providing that data more digitally, and also providing the mechanisms and wherewithals for that data to be downloaded or reviewed, searched upon and requested if need be. So where does that all lead us to? Well, It led us to really the creation of the Geoscience Data Transformation Strategy back in 2019. Now, this strategy really was developed pretty much on what I've just mentioned around understanding the need to improve access to data and improve the way we are managing those data sets, and to provide the ability for getting more value out of those data sets. So the strategy itself actually developed 13 direct actions. Now, those 13 direct actions really have set the foundational backbone for standing up the Geoscience Data Transformation Program, which I'll talk about shortly. But that program really has been enabled to deliver against the expectations set out in these 13 direct actions. And it's kind of covering a lot of what I've mentioned before about understanding how we can improve accessibility to that data, the internal systems that data is currently being managed through, how we can improve the ability to flag quality of data, how we can improve more data to be made digital, made available through cloud storage or through mechanisms that kind of allowed for that review and download. And importantly, a big part of what the program is wanting to do and will be doing is making sure that we do have key stakeholder engagement, not just internally within the department, but also importantly externally, with industry, with academia, with our vendors, to make sure that we understand. We talk about being able to improve the way data is managed, recorded, and also being able to be searched, that we understand what those requirements are from an external perspective that will allow us to improve the current mechanisms we have for that. So here we are. We have the Geoscience Data Transformation Program up and running. We have been going for about 20 months now into our 60-month journey. So it is a 5-year program of work that started back in October 2021. We are therefore due to complete this current phase of the program through until 2026. And the other important thing to note here that we are fully funded during that time frame as well. So what have we been doing over the last few months? Well, I will talk more about that as we go through this presentation, but it's fair to note a lot of the earlier phase that we have been doing as a program is the usual requirements around standing up program resources, looking at the compliance obligations from a government perspective, making sure we have the right mechanism in place for that. And obviously we have been granted $10.6 million for this program, and we need to make sure that we spend that money wisely and we are open to understanding and providing information around how we're spending that money. Up to this point in time, the program has been also focused on a lot of the internal analysis and review. So looking at our current state, looking at what we can do to think about in terms of what the future state might need to look like from an internal perspective. We are currently moving more towards the internal point of view, understanding what the path might be around any new design or development or technologies we may need to consider as we move forward. So we're certainly getting closer to finishing that internal discovery work. Then we start to think about how we tackle the external requirements. So we have just stood up a activity which is starting to look at the current way data is being discovered and searched and downloaded, and also the way data is currently lodged. So there'll be some activities happening in that space soon. We also know as we go along this journey, and I mentioned before about the engagement side as well, that we do have that stakeholder engagement, and I'll touch a little bit more about that a bit later on. But that's also key for us in terms of understanding what we need to do to set that engagement up. What's the type of engagement we need to have? How do we want to provide information, both from an internal perspective, but importantly externally, how we want to do that. And certainly this webinar is one of those mechanisms for trying to provide information externally so people can understand what the program's doing, what the intent is, and how we're tracking as well. So what is the approach the Geoscience Data Transformation Program has taken to try and unlock the potential of this data, to make data more accessible and to make data more usable? Well, like all good programs of work, we do have various frameworks. We certainly have a data framework and our 4 foundational elements, which you can see there. And that really talks about the fact we know as a program we have to worry about the capture of data, both from an internal perspective as well as from industry, so that lodgement side. We know we need to what we call optimize the data, so that's everything from scanning, from digitizing if we need to, from transcribing, but also importantly from cleansing of data, from improving metadata associated with that data to improve therefore the search experience that end users will have from a discovery perspective. We know we need to manage that data, so that's certainly around the internal systems I've talked about, and some of the journey we've had to date has been around focusing on some of the internal applications. But how we need to manage that data, and also from a cloud storage perspective. Now, I talked about the importance of cloud and that ongoing cloud revolution. Well, what's it mean for us? And one of the things we're currently doing at the moment is looking at the options for where do we want to continue to store our geoscience data, recognizing that geoscience data has its challenges around some of the file sizes, some of the individual data sets being very large. So how do we manage that in a cloud environment? So we're currently going through that review right now. And then we have that share component. So how we're going to make that data accessible, discoverable through some form of discovery portal. Also, like all good programs, we do have a shape. We have a wheel in our case. And what that's really identifying for us is our program activities. So we've got everything around looking at the storage, looking at the search, looking at the lodgement side, looking at the optimization of data, looking at our vocabulary. So interesting, as I mentioned before, those standardization of naming conventions to identify our data sets and the geology associated with it. And then we have something we've called our defined geo properties, which is basically our internal way of managing our data. And the other key component, two key components here, which is also around the integration. So how can we improve the accessibility of data from our various databases through some form of integration layer. And the key component not to forget, of course, is the data governance. So how we're going to supply or identify those that are responsible for various data sets in terms of its various phases, in terms of ownership of the data sets themselves, the quality flags, if changes happen to that data, how is that actually going to be processed and approved? So all these key components really make up what is the framework for the Geoscience Data Transformation Program. And the diagram on the right there really just highlights all the pieces I've talked about there in terms of the different aspects of what we have to do to tackle the various components for this program. So it's a lot of work for us to do, a lot of components for us to worry about. The key thing to note, though, is this program is very much around the data as well as the technologies that will help support the data in its usability and accessibility. And rather importantly, one aspect of any good program is the need to make sure we have good resources on board to help us run that program, to run all the different components, all the activities that come under that program. And we do have an interesting approach to this program, recognizing really from up front the need to make sure that the way we have resourced the program includes, importantly, internal resources, staff within the Geological Survey that are coming along the journey with us as we develop the requirements of the program, and also will help to transition to business as usual once the program has wrapped up towards the end of 2026. So you'll see there a picture of some of us, and even that's changed. Our program team has grown more than that now. But in essence, right now, we do have currently 14 contractors. Majority do come with very strong petroleum and mining backgrounds, which is useful, and a component that we were quite keen to make sure we could get hold of, to make sure that there's an understanding in terms of the data sets, the geoscience, the geology that we're dealing with and tackling as part of our data sets. It was important to try and get strong resources on board that understood the challenge. We have also, as I mentioned, internal resources we use. There's 28 internal Geological Survey staff, and those do include SMEs within the survey, so as well as those that will continue to support the program, as I mentioned, post the program end. And we also have currently an external reference group, which is, as I mentioned before, this is the external engagement with what we've started to do with industry, academia, and our vendors and our Met sector. These 56 external reference group members, we have tried to set up as a forum, basically, but with representation across the various sectors within that group, to give us access to good, strong candidates or members that use our data regularly, but also that can provide insights and thoughts around the types of technology or the types of functions we might need to consider as part of our journey as we develop that new technical landscape. And importantly, it's another avenue for us to reach out and collaborate. So not only providing information to that external reference group for them to share with their own respective companies, but also again to ensure we can collaborate in the way and get the feedback and the inputs and the thoughts from that membership group as well. I should say as well that external reference group certainly I expect will change. It'll flux and sort of flex up and down based on the activities we are doing. And the other intent with that external reference group is out of that we will be establishing specific focus groups that will help us talk about and discuss specific aspects at a given time that we're currently trying to tackle through a program. As I've mentioned, the journey so far for us has been very much around the establishment of the program, governance structures and compliance aspects, and obviously resourcing, as I've mentioned as well. So we certainly have been focusing on those internal requirements, use cases, as I've also mentioned, and looking at sort of standardization of some of our naming conventions and our vocabularies. And a key piece we have been working quite hard on, which I will touch on in a bit more detail now, is around our data optimization. So we have actually in the background been starting to really look into scanning and digitization of our legacy data sets and really to start that cleansing and harmonization work. So when we are ready to start to make this data more accessible through even our current systems, but certainly with regards to developing our external discovery portal, we've got more data sets that are ready to be made available externally and to help in that enhancement of adding value to getting more access to these data sets going forward. So what have we been doing over the last 20 months with regards to our data optimization? Well, a fair bit. Part of the process really has been around trying to identify prioritization. Where do we begin? There's a lot of data the Geological Survey holds, and there's a lot of data that needs to be either digitized, cleansed, made more usable from an end user perspective. So we have started certainly with some of our older data sets, some of our legacy data sets, certainly around the paper, the scanning of paper, seismic and well logs, field notebooks there, library maps and thin section registers as well. We have also started to vectorize and digitize seismic sections and well logs as well, so making those files ready for consumption into those technical applications. Hopefully we'll be able to make those available soon. And we've also been finishing off really the transcription of the sort of the older tape medias. The survey has already done a lot of work in bringing those tape formats up to date. So just finishing off that process. And also there's also a need to digitally enrich some of our paleontology reports. So that's going in and really capturing some additional metadata, some important information that'll again help the enhancement or the richness of the searchability of this data once it's made available through a discovery. The final part of the journey I want to mention so far up to date is to mention again around the engagement we have had so far with our external stakeholders. And this is an important component that will continue to mature as we go through. But we have certainly been quite busy. We have stood up the external reference groups I mentioned in March of this year. That was stood up, those 56 members. If you can see the pictures there. And we had a really good opening session, some good dialogue, good collaboration. And there's a keenness, I think I would say, with all the members to get involved and want to help in the journey that we've got, because ultimately it will help externally the journey they may have to have in the future and how they use our data. We've also been doing more outreach out in the field more, reaching out to those organisations or those areas where it's not so easy for them to come down into Perth and meet us personally in the CBD. We wanted to make sure that the outreach includes going out further to the field areas as well. So that's an ongoing process around how we improve that visibility out into those areas. But we've also had a chance to catch up with some international visitors that come through the Geological Survey. Again, good discussion. It's interesting that some of these international entities that come through are having the same challenges. So they're looking at the same aspects around how to improve the accessibility of their geoscience data sets that they're dealing with. So there's certainly lessons we can learn, which we do want to continue to do. We also are actively engaged with other government agencies, both from within Australia, but also internationally. We've had a lot of conversations with the US, with Canada, with the UK, with Norway. So we're continuing to expand that knowledge that we are receiving through those conversations to make sure that what we are doing we understand the challenges, and we can change our approach to try and avoid any of the pitfalls that the others may have already gone through that are more mature in their journey. So what is to come next? Well, we are certainly finishing off, as I mentioned before, the internal use case development and requirements gathering, so we can consider our technology requirements for our internal data management, as well as really coming to a point of defining what our storage requirements or our options will be for cloud storage provision for our geoscience datasets, and really finishing off our work around designing our integration layer for those datasets as well. But one thing I think it's really worth mentioning as well, which will be new to the Geological Survey, and I think fairly new to Western Australia, is the fact that we are standing up and establishing a thin section scanning centre at our Carlisle core library. And what this will involve is basically two thin section scanners that will allow us to scan our 400,000 thin sections that we currently have in the custodianship of the Geological Survey. A lot of those thin sections are sitting, as you can imagine, in their original boxes or original files, and we do need to make sure we can preserve the data on those thin sections, as well as unlock a lot of potential information that resides within them. By scanning these thin sections, it also means that we can mitigate the need to necessarily hand out and borrow out these thin sections, them being the only versions of these thin sections in existence, but be able to offer more of a digital approach to being able to analyse the information from those thin sections through the scanners that we are looking to set up and establish. So certainly there'll be more news on that once we've established that scanning bureau, and also some information we can provide on the thin section scans themselves once we've started that process going. And the other thing just to mention there as well is the completion of our bulk load tool that will help us to migrate some of the data sets we have already optimized and digitized. We do need to make sure we can then start to make that data available into our storage environment, and again obviously externally available through either our current systems or eventually our new discovery portal that we will develop. I'll conclude this part of the webinar by leaving this slide up, which provides details on how you can find out further information about the programme through our dedicated website page. And of course, you can drop us an email at our dedicated email address. Further information on the programme will also be made available through our various social medias, so please do look out for them. In the meantime, I do hope you have enjoyed a look into our journey so far as we continue to unlock the potential that we know is held in the data that the Geological Survey continues to be custodian for. Thank you.